Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Van Diesel back at another Card Fight Vanguard deck profile. If you guys enjoyed, don't like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. Let's get more started. Today we have Genesis, Fortuna, Yatagarasu. So, Fortuna, as exciting as one of its skills was basically just a letdown and a knockoff of Battle Sisters. And then Yatagarasu came around. And then when you shove them both into the same deck, your opponent will probably hate you. I know I did when I fought it, and I just regret that decision every day of my life. So, Fortuna Yatagarasu. One can get you force markers, and the other can get you a front row restand. So, and plus 10. And 2 draws. And make your opponent lose in 1 turn. So, let's not dwell on that, and let's go ahead and get this deck profile started, shall we? First up, our starter for today is Pan of New Style. Grade 0 boost, 10k shield, 6k base, auto when wrote upon, draw a card, then if your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 1 or greater, you get a quick shield ticket to your hand. Nothing too special about it, standard starter, you get a draw, you get a quick shield. You're running because you need a starter that wants that skill, but honestly, if you could run a card that had a higher grade in Soul, I would say run it, but I don't think there is one in Genesis. That there is, replace it with this, because that would actually be better. But, you know, Pan of New Style, he is not my favorite, but he belongs to Valcina, which is one of my favorite Genesis decks. So, yeah, Pan of New Style comes on with this one as well. Trigger-wise, we run 4 draw Peaches and Goddess of Self-Sacrifice, Kusinada. Grade 0 boost, 0 shield, 5k base. Draw trigger, continue selling 4 Sentinels in your deck, and auto guard circle. And place this card from your hand, and one of these cannot be until the battle. Critical trigger, Mercury of Gravitas, and Battle Maiden Kukurahime. Here is why I run all of these respectively instead of 12 crits. I use Force 2. And restanding the front row, except the Vanguard, with Force 2s on them is very dangerous enough already, especially when Glaive is not a once per turn, and its ability lasts for the turn. So, yeah, that's my reasoning. And you need hand cards to call rear guards, and you need hand cards to abuse the shit out of the skills that are Soul Blast based, or for guarding purposes. So, yeah, in worst case scenario, you can also just rely on Yatagarasu to turn this thing into a Guardian without hand cards, so yeah, 4 draw PG, 8 crit. If you want to run 12 crit, you can, but I do prefer this, and 4 heal triggers in which have big pots a lot rare. And no heal guardians, if you want to know why, go check out a video from 5 weeks ago to get a full description, but otherwise the miniature description is they are detrimental to my playstyle. As for grade 1s, 3 copies of Mystic Beast Hati. Grade 1 boost, 10k shield, 8k base, continues rear van to rear during your turn. If your cards were Soul Blast for this card's cost this turn, it gets plus 5 for your card's cost. So basically, Yatagarasu, who restands your front row, or Fortuna, who can use her skill to stack the top of your deck, or one of your, or Glaive, who is literally the thing that you want on field at all times. Yeah, easy 5k. That's easy to pull off. And auto van to rear when placed to Soul Charge 2. Okay, good news behind that. That is a Soul Charge that has helped me on so many occasions because Yatagarasu requires you to Soul Blast cards of certain grades to some extent. Downside, that is a mandatory Soul Charge, which means if you call it while you're at 4 deck cards, I'm sorry, but you don't get to choose whether those top 2 cards go to Soul or not. They're going to Soul, whether you like it or not. So, 3 copies of Hati, because sometimes it can help you, and sometimes it'll be the death of you. But that 5k helps a lot. And 3 copies of Mystic Beast Skull. Grade 1 boost, 10k shield, 8k base, can choose Van Rear Guard during your turn if cards are paid for your Soul Blast. Cost during this turn gets plus 5, so same as Hati over here. And auto Vanguard Rear Guard, when placed from hand, look at top 5, go to 1 grade 3 card from one of them, put it to your hand, and shuffle your deck. If a card was put, you gotta discard 1. Standard search ability, nothing too special about it. You get a grade 3, add it to hand, and then you discard your quick shield. Here's why Skull is here. The 5k does help. You don't run it for the grade 3 shirt. You run it because Hati is here. Because you cannot run one dog without running the other one at the same copy. If you do, then if you run them at the same copies in the same deck, then okay, you have an okay in my book. If you don't, we're going to have a problem, Buster. You see, over many millennia of years, I have acquired a certain set of skills. A set of skills that allows me to hunt down anyone I desire. Now, either you run these 2 dogs together, or you're my next prey. Fuck, I tried to crack my knuckles on camera and I failed miserably. But you get the intimidation point. 3 copies of Skull. And on to our next grade one, 3 copies of White Brush Witch Arctic. I love her. Every other deck I run her in, but for some reason this is the deck she chooses to screw me in. Grade 1 boost, 10k shield, 8k base, auto vanguard, rear guard. When placed, look at top 2. Put one into the soul and put the other at the top. So stack trigger, get soul card. And yeah, every time I use her, 95% of that time, it's going to be 2 triggers at the top of the deck, which sucks a lot, but it happens to be too much for it not to be coincidence. And auto rear once per turn, when your grade 3 or greater vanguard attacks, one of your vanguards gets +5 for the turn, and this unit. So 13k booster for the turn, or 13k swinger, and the vanguard hits for an 18, which is really nice, because if you boost this with Arctic, that means the vanguard and Arctic will get +5 at the same time, meaning for a +10, which means your opponent has to guard 10k more shield for at least a 1 to pass on the vanguard attack. So 3 copies of Arctic, because she is really good in the fact that she can make the vanguard stronger, she can make herself stronger, and she can deck filter for triggers and get you a soul all for free. Literally everything about her is free. 3 copies, except for her price of buying. 3 copies of Witch of Orange's Valcina. Grade 1 boost, 10k shield, 8k base. Auto, when this card is put into your drop zone from soul during your main phase. Bind to choose 2 cards from your drop, put 1 into the soul and put the other at the bottom of deck. And auto rear at the end of the battle that it boosted, shove 2 rear guards in the same column as unit to soul, including herself, and draw a card. So the downside to this is it only works if you were to soul blast her during the main phase, and I thought it was in the battle phase. So, because that would make it a lot more useful with the Yatagarasu, but because it's not, I mean, technically you can. No, it says during your main phase, yeah, so you have to use this with Fortuna, but, it's a free 2 cards. One of them replaces this, and then the other one genuinely goes to bottom, and they can be anything. Like, they can both be triggers, so that's helpful. And the shoving 2 rear guards to soul and get a draw in a deck that kind of needs rear guards, or like certain soul fodder, yeah, Valcina does prove some worth here. The first skill is kind of useless unless you're sitting on a Fortuna the whole time, but the second skill is actually really good, and I give her a 3 for that because she is really nice in getting your soul set up for the following turn where you're going to Yatagarasu your opponent to death. 3 of. And our last grade 1 is 4 of literally the best grade 1 in this entire deck. Appa Witch Cider. Grade 1 boost, 10k shield, 8k base, auto rear. At the end of the battle that it boosted anything, you may soul charge 1 and bounce it to hand, or soul charge 2. Okay, so you get a soul charge and bounce a 10k shield to hand, which is really nice, and you can do this in the early game, or just soul charge 2 and keep it on the board. If I said soul charge 2 earlier and bounce it to hand, I meant soul charge 1 and bounce it to hand, or you can just keep it on the board and soul charge 2, which is really nice because a lot of decks, except for the decks that are actually made to retire, cannot retire during grade 2 turn. So if you're going first, you can just use this to your advantage and keep them all on board, like call 3 of them, soul charge 4 if you're boosting one with another, and then just soul charge 1 behind the vanguard, or just call a whole board and for some reason and then soul charge 6. Yeah, Cider's really good. She can get her soul back to hand for guarding purposes, can get you a fuck ton of soul, but that's not the only ability. It also has auto when it's put onto guard circle. Put a card from your hand to soul, and this unit gets plus 5k shield for until in the battle for every 3 cards in soul. So plus the card you just shoved to soul, and probably the one you soul charged to bounce back to hand in the first place, plus any other one of the card, this is at least a 15k shield, and you combine with the Yatagarasu. Let us assume that you are at an average of 6 soul, because that's what I'm normally at when you use this skill. So typically I go to 7 or 8, so that would be plus 10, so 20k shield. Use Yatagarasu, Soul Blast 3, plus 10. Oh, this thing's a 30k shield. This thing is the equivalent to a crit stun on Yatagarasu. 4 of, I don't want to hear it. And on to grade 2s. 2 copies of Prometheus of Dancing Light, despite the fact Arctic came out second. Obviously, it's much better because it's an upgraded version of Prometheus over here. Grade 2 Intercept 5k shield, 10k base, auto vanner rear. When placed, look at top 2, put one on the top, put one into soul, and put the other on top. They literally took this skill and put it onto Arctic. And then auto rear, when it attacks, if your opponent's vanguard's grade 3 or greater, one of your vanguards then you get plus 5 for the turn. So this is obviously objectively worse than Arctic, because Arctic does it when the vanguard swings, and is granted a once per turn, but they both give power to themselves, but this one does it when the vanguard swings, this one does it when it swings, and the opponent's vanguard's a grade 3 or greater. So I don't know about Prometheus. You definitely run it for that first go, because while it is mandatory, it's still useful. So I do give it a 2 for that, but I never swing with it first. There are rare occasions where I will swing with it first, and those occasions haven't happened in years now. So 2 of Prometheus, but he mainly goes off for the you look at top 2 and he's free skill. 4 copies of Strong Bow of the Starry Knight Ulysses, however. Grade 2 Intercept 5k shield, 10k base, auto rear. At the end of the battle that attack the vanguard, shove it to soul, draw a card, and soul charge 1. Okay, I don't need to tell you how good this is, but if I need to tell you, then you swing it to Vanguard, doesn't have to hit, goes to Soul, get a draw, Soul Charge 1. If you don't know what Yatagarasu does, it involves you, if you want to get its full ability off, you got to Soul Blast 9, and in that case, this will do nothing for you unless the Soul card you Soul Charge is a grade 3. But if you want to get the main ability off, which is a Soul Blast of grade equal to 7, Ulysses is 2. You need 2 grade 2s and 1 grade 3 to pull that off. This nets you one of them. So, and could possibly net you one of the other 2. So, needless to say, 4 copies of Ulysses because it helps set up and it literally does it for free. 4 copies. And then 4 copies of literally the best grade 2 in this deck to spam. Unappeasable Bitter Glaive. Grade 2 intercept 5k shield, 10k base. Auto Vanner Rear. When placed, counterblast 1, soul charge 1, choose a card from your soul, bounce it to hand. Get your grade 1 that you rode back, so literally even if you have to ride Cider, who is the worst card to ride on Vanguard, you can just fetch it right back with Glaive. Get your starter to hand if there's nothing in there. Get a trigger that ended up in there. Literally just get the card you soul charge if there's nothing better to get. And you can do it more than once per turn, and it works on Vanner Rear, so automatically that's really good. And then Auto Rear, when it swings into anything, Soul Blast 1, it gets plus 10 for the turn. Not a once per turn. Swings into anything, you can restand with Yatagarasu, do it again, and this thing will at least be swinging for 30. But assuming that you would use it with Yatagarasu, it'd be at least swinging for 40 that turn. So Glaive, good card. Good, just good card. 4 copies. If Fenrir had a way to restand it, I think Fenrir would be more broken than it actually is. I think Fenrir does have a way to restand, actually. Yeah, no, the Fenrir Divine Gauge thing. Okay, what I mean by that is Fenrir on its own, if they had a way to stand it. Yes, Fenrir would be much broken, but as of now, they just have to rely on Regalius to do that. But still, Gleipnir, really good. 4 of. Grade 3 time. 3 copies of Goddess of Good Luck, Fortuna. Grade 3, 200 Force Gift, 13k base. Act Vanguard once per turn. Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1 or more cards. Look at the same number of cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of cards Soul Blaster for this cost and put them on top deck in any order. So you have to Soul Blast at least 1, but you get to at least look at the top card of your deck and put it back at the top and stack the order. So typically I like to Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 4 because my twin drive is going to show me some. I like to have 1 for soul charging purposes to get back 1 of my soul, unless I Soul Blast 5 to get 2 back, and I like to see what my next damage check is going to be to try to fuck around with it and make sure I live to my next turn. And then Auto Van, when it swings, choose any number of your rear guards and you soul charge 1 for each unit chosen. Downside is that is a mandatory skill. Upside is it says choose any number, so you can just choose to pick none and then you don't soul charge. So it's really nice. It gives you free soul charges to refill for her cost next turn, and you don't have to use her skill if you don't want to. I mean, it's a mandatory, it will go off. It's just a choosing of how much you want to soul charge, which can be 0. And Auto Van, once per turn, when your damage check reveals a trigger unit, get Imaginary Force. This is why I always check top 4. This is literally why. You check top 2 for your drive checks, you check the 3rd card for soul charge purposes, and you check the 4th card just in case it trigger. And if you see 3 triggers, you obviously want to make it so that the one that you're going to soul charge ends up on top first, your drive check's going to end up next, and then your damage check for next turn. So since you're going to get a trigger, you're going to get a force gift, granted once per turn, but that is a way to get force 2s, because you can write this on your turn, get a force 2, take a damage during your opponent's next turn. Oh, damage trigger, how did I know damage trigger was coming? Get it off on Vanguard, make so you live to next turn, and you get a force marker for next turn. You go into Yatagarasu next turn, your opponent's dead because you have 3 force 2s on board. Fortuna is all around a really good grade 3 for setup. Definitely not an amazing finisher. I mean, she can be a finisher, definitely, but you need a lot of setup for her to be a finisher. But I definitely do think she is an amazing setupper. Like, I think she's underestimated by a lot of people. I know I somewhat underestimated her a lot back when she was released, but even then, I do still think she's a good card. You just have to find the right purpose for her. 3 copies of Fortuna. And then 4 copies of our last card in the deck, or unit card anyways. Sunlight Goddess Yatagarasu. Grade 3 Twin Drive Force Gift 13k base. I somehow have an attachment to both these grade 3s as when I started playing 0 again, I mained Genesis for a short while, and I forgot which one it was between these two, unless it was both of them, but I had used one of them and wrecked through the entirety of ranked really easily because they were really good, so I thank them for that. Anyways, Auto Van, when it swings into anything, Counterblast 1 is Soul Blast 3, and perform all the following according to the sum of the cards you Soul Blasted for this cost. So basically, you could Soul Blast 2 grade 3s, or 3 grade 3s for the full effect, or you can Soul Blast 1 grade 3 and 2 grade 2s, or 1 grade 3, 1 grade 2, and then 1 grade 0 just to say fuck it, but you always have to Soul Blast 3. So even if you have the cost to meet for the skill you're trying to go off of, you still have to Soul Blast 3, unfortunately, even if you have the requirements with 2 of them. So anyways, perform the following. If you Soul Blast cards with grades of 5 or more sum, all your former units get +10 for the turn, so Persona Ride. 7 or more, choose 2 of your rear guards and stand them, so they can be in the back row, they can be in the front row, they can just be a column, cool. And then 9 or more, the one you're going to have to use 3 grade 3s for, draw 2. And Auto Van, when this unit's put on guard circle, when your unit's put on guard circle, Soul Blast 3, and that unit gets +10k for the battle, in terms of shield. So, combine that with Cider, Cider's going to be... because you have at least 3 soul to do that with, so use Cider first, 15, Soul Blast 3, 25. So, yeah, at the very least, Cider's a 25k shield with that, and everything else gets a lot of extra shield on it, and you can use it with your grade 3's worst case scenario, which I believe will actually save me in a match to the death. And you can combine it with Fortuna, like I said, to get Force Gifts set up for next turn. Ride this when you have 2 Force Gifts, call Glaive near to one side, call Prometheus to the other. Swing with Prometheus, get +5k to himself and to Vanguard. Swing with Glaive near, Soul Blast 1, get +10k for that current battle. And then swing with Yatagarasu, skill Soul Blast, a grade 3, most likely Fortuna, and 2 grade 2s. Stand Glaive near, +10 to Farmer, by the way. Stand Prometheus, they both have boosters behind them, which is most likely Hotties/Skull, so they'll get +5. And if you're like me, you will also have another Hottie or Skull behind Vanguard Circle. You get the point. Big number swing. Unless your opponent has a bunch of PGs and or at 3 damage, they are dying this turn. So, yeah, Yatagarasu is really good for the multi-attack. Definitely puts a good staple to it. I don't think it's something you should sit on, but thankfully, Fortuna, being the previous release, it was kind of like a setup to this, where a lot of people underestimated it, think it was going to be some kind of finisher or a really good boss monster. It may not be a good boss monster to stay on, but it's definitely a good boss monster to set up on. And while this may not be a good boss monster to stay on its own, it can definitely be a good finisher. You can bind them together, you get a nice balance of yin and yang. I really wish this thing was called the Moon Goddess now, because I really could make the joke of yin and yang here. But hey, their arts are parallel to each other, so I will take it. 4 of. And then I give 7 Force 1, 7 Force 2s. When acquired, they both go in Vanguard or Rearguard circle, and they can be both put on the same circle multiple times. Difference is Force 1 stack and Force 2 doesn't. And Force 1, the unit on that circle gets +10 during your turn, so you have a per copy. So basically, if you have 1 on one circle, it gets +10. You have 3 +30, 5 +50, 7 +70, etc. And Force 2, the original critical of the unit on there becomes 2. While you can't put this on the same circle multiple times, it will not stack. So for example, if you put it on for the Vanguard twice, it will only keep the original critical 2 because it words the original critical becomes 2. If it said the critical gets +1, unless it said the original critical gets +1, then yes, it would change it multiple times based on the amount you had, but because as the original critical becomes 2, it is stuck at 2. But either way, Force 2 is easily the better out of the two, because if you actually do the way you're supposed to do it and you ride Fortuna first, you get set up for Force Gifts, you do some small rushing during your first grade 3 turn, and then, get a damage trigger, set up on the rear guard, and then ride Yatagarasu. You got 2 rear guards where he stands next turn, and they're going to have Persona Rise on them, and if one of them is Glaive near, your opponent's going to need PGs to survive, like 5 attacks that are all going to have Force 2 on them. Force 2 is the way to go, but if you want to go Force 1 because maybe force them up to high damage early, go Force 1. And then our quick shield, which is when one of your units is attacked, it gets +5k for the battle. Nothing too special about it, just a 5k shield. We don't really have discard fodder for it this time, except for Skull and or Cider, so feel free to actually, and the PG, so feel free to actually use this as a 5k shield for once. So 1 copy. And then that's it for the deck. So if you guys enjoyed, all around, I just find it fun. Just like, Fortuna finally gets some worth in her, because you have no intention on sitting on her the entire game. Yatagarasu definitely makes for a fun card to use, because as you know, I like the restand mechanic. Get you a Persona Ride, easy guarding, you get to draw 2. You could tech a Valcina in here just to get a guaranteed the first one, but I'm not going to shove a grade 5 that I cannot use into this deck just for the sake of if it ends up in Soul, it can be useful. I'm not doing that. If you want to do it, go ahead, but I'm not doing it. So yeah, all around it's a good deck. It's very fun, it is consistent, and presumably everything in this deck is cheap. I know half of these cards are cheap as hell, so, feel free. So if you guys enjoyed, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, donate to the Patreon, join Discord, follow the Twitch, and I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.